Don't worry about it. Folks, welcome to the greatest food tasting show there is. Last week, I
No,
was
sorry.
stuffing my face during the beginning of the show because I was running ragged. Folks, welcome to Talking Crit. I am Eric Tenkar, your bartender in the OSR. For those that might not know, that this over here is Bad Mike Battalato of North Texas, my once a week work spouse. Diagonally, well, right below me is none other than Jim Kitchen. And our special guest today, Ronin Wong. You've probably seen him on TV. It's funny that I did recognize you from The Man in the High Castle. And I was like,
Oh,
I was trying to figure out, like, I was like, I know him from there, but I was like, I saw that show like what 6 7 years ago, and then I was able to like I'm proud of myself. I really am. So welcome, Ronan.
He was only
well,
one
thank you.
episode. That is pretty good. If you could,
Yeah,
that's
no,
Yeah,
yeah.
only one episode.
I was an addict of that show when it was on.
It's a good show. It was good.
Mm.
So welcome.
But he's also a game fan, and that's why we've had him on here because he's been a guest at quite a few cons, including North Texas last month.
Yes.
And we loved having it. It was awesome. We got a lot of positive feedback for Ronin. Because North Texas is about gaming. That's the main thing. There is gaming, and if you run and play games, you're in. You're thumbs up. So Ronin is definitely a gamer. So
it's not drinking, awesome. Mike. I thought drinking was one of the aspects of North Texas.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I didn't know what Ronin drank. I didn't see Ronin drinking. Was he drinking? Did I miss her at the bar?
Later. I finished running my games first.
Right.
I didn't want good idea. Very good. So recommended. That is recommended. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that, Ronin.
Terrible.
So you've got a heavy con schedule because the reason. So let me tell you a short story. The reason that we asked you is because Ben Barsh met you at Page and just raved about it. Oh man, this guy is great. You want him for your con. I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. And he said, oh, he's an actor, but no, he games. And so I trust, Ben's got pretty good chops and finding people that are compatible to what we do here. And we talked a few times. I said, I think you would really like this show because it's a small show, and we're just really about gaming. And then you were at Game Hole last year also, and I kind of passed you by a couple times. And then Gary Con, were you at Gary Con last year?
No, I wasn't at Gary Con. No,
you weren't at Gary Con. But I saw that you had a pretty full convention schedule. So I said, well, this guy must love gaming because he's at all these conventions. And so, we were just so glad to have you. And like I said, we had a lot of positive feedback from people who met you or in your games. And so, that's the best thing you can say about somebody at a con is that, everybody was like, wow, that guy's a real gamer. He's really, and I don't even know. I don't know if most people knew you're an actor or not. They just knew that they're gaming. And they, I mean,
your anonymity is preserved.
I mean, Eric gets his wife is always running around going, do you know who my husband is all the time?
Wait. That was only the first time you hit the North Texas.
So, other than that, I don't know if anybody knows who Eric is really, but, his wife will tell you who he is. Definitely.
Eric Tenkar, don't you know?
Don't you know who my husband is?
Wow. I'm not even sure where to start. So Ronan, I guess maybe the easiest place to start is how did you get into gaming? What was your first role-playing game?
Oh, it was the Holmes D&D box set.
Oh, Be Still My Heart.
I didn't know anyone else. Yeah, so I didn't know anyone else that played. I guess it was when D&D was really big because I found it in a department store. I had no idea what it was, and I had a bit of allowance money, and I bought it. And it was during that time when they ran out of dice.
Oh, you got the chits.
Oh, you got chits.
Oh, another victim of the chits.
I had. And I was thinking, I actually cut out the chits and I put them in some of my mother's coffee cups, and that's what I used. But I had no players, so I kind of learned the game solo. Oh yes, the chits, yeah. My original box is long gone. Like later on, when I started collecting, I bought like I guess uncut set. I guess just to have a copy of what it originally was. But yeah, so I didn't have players, so I just kind of walk through it came with the module In Search of the Unknown. That's what I had, right? So I
Mhm.
I got some of the random like pre-generated player characters, and I rolled dice for their decision making. Oh, do you touch this? You do that? You go this way, that way, and that's how I learned the rules. And I made bad mistakes each time. I remember the first time I ran it, the magic users I played Mail on, and I had absolutely no idea, right? So I was just sort of going through this. Eventually, I kind of learned how to play, but it was another year before I actually found the group. And I found the group, and I wanted to play, but no one wanted to DM. So I knew nothing about the game. I'm getting tired of this. I'll DM, just get. What do I need? And they had moved on to AD&D, so I bought like. I didn't have a dime. This is probably the last cent that I had. I bought the DM's guide. I didn't even have a player's handbook. I thought, well, the players have it. They'll fill me in, and we kind of made a campaign together, and then I think somehow I got a copy of the Village of Hamlet. I think, and then I think that's how we started playing the game. And at the time, having never watched anyone play, I thought we were supposed to act out all the parts. I had no idea. So I thought, okay, when you have to kind of play each character, you have to play, the frogs that suck you in at the entrance to the Temple of Hamlet. You have to play the frog. I thought that's how it was played. And my players looked at me like I was weird and from Mars. Eventually, I found out, oh, you don't have to do that. But we kind of did it a bit. We got pretty hammy. It was mostly because they enjoyed what I did, and so that's I guess that's how we started. Right. Eventually, I kind of learned how to be a DM. Like it took a while. Mostly I was just acting the part and then filling in the rest of it. Um, I think in a way that's kind of led to my acting because when I was in high school, I never really dreamed of going into acting, and I never really thought about it. I thought, oh, it looks like it's kind of fun, but I never really took it seriously. I think D&D was the first time I actually like played a character and thought, this might be kind of neat. So back at the high school, I tried out for the school musical, and they gave me a part. It wasn't a big part, but I got a part, and I thought, yeah, and I thought actually at high school the musical kind of sucked, and the experience really sucked. But somehow later on, um, I think I got fired from a corporate job. I know this is getting long-winded, isn't it? I'll wrap it up. I got fired from a corporate job, and when I was in between jobs, I started doing background work because it was available in Vancouver. And so I did a lot of background work, and I had taken like one theater course as an elective, and I auditioned for this agent, and they started representing me, and then they started sending me out on auditions. The third audition I had, I got a role in a TV pilot, and I thought, holy crap! If this pilot gets picked up, right, I could actually just do this. So I did the pilot. It went well. The pilot did not get picked up, but I was already. It was kind of too late, and I started doing acting at that point. And I tried to catch up. Like most people, I think in the U.S. or in Canada, like you take classes along the way. And I eventually sort of got some training in for things that I didn't know how to do. I think eventually I got quite trained, but it was kind of along the way, And all the time, like I kept playing D&D and kept running things. I even started being interested in writing for D&D. Eventually, I did write an adventure for Shadowrun for FASA. It was called Paradise Lost, where we took the runners to Hawaii. And that's a whole different story in itself. I guess I might as well tell it. I've gone this far
Yeah.
with it. Sure. Yeah, kind of like, yeah. You wind an actor up and the guy never shuts up. You got to sort of like stop me at some point. No. So what happened with that was I had a mentor. His name was Nigel Findlay. And if you were around in the 80s, like Nigel was like one of the top freelancers. He wrote for all kinds of systems.
The great Nigel
Shadowrun.
family. Yeah, he's all over everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all over. His fingerprints all over the Shadowrun world. And so there's a bunch of us who were kind of like, he was like our mentor, and we sort of met. We talked about stuff. And at the time, Nigel was very busy. He was writing another novel, which was set in Hawaii. And PASA, I think, wanted him to do like a combination module source book to go along with it. He didn't want to write the module as well. He was just really too much to do. So he asked around in the group, right? Okay, which one of you has been to Hawaii? And I thought, I went there for my honeymoon. I went there. So I guess I have to credit my wife with this, somehow, because I had been to Hawaii, and so I drafted up something, a proposal for Nigel, and he gave me one or two edits. I wrote it up again. He said, "No, we're going to go with this." So he wrote the novel. He wrote a bit of the source material at the back of the adventure, but I wrote the adventure, and so that's how I got into writing for games. And then there came to be kind of a tough decision point, because I was just getting into acting. I was doing music as well, and I was kind of thinking about writing for role playing games, and I thought it got to be too much. It got to be like too much. I thought every last hobby has become work now, so I backed off on role playing. I sort of went back into just running a normal campaign, and didn't pursue the writing. Instead, focused on acting and then music. I'm not actually sure I made the right decision, because years later, like role playing becomes huge. Like, I thought, well, I better go into music and film and TV, because I wanted to keep role playing just for pure enjoyment at the time. I mean, these days it's very different. I realize, like, you can enjoy things, right? It's not really a question of whether you're being paid for it or not. It's more like your mindset. But back then, didn't really know. I probably, I spoke to someone about this once, and honestly, if back then, like, I could have made a living just running games somehow, I might not have gone into acting. I don't know, because if you're doing this one thing and you love to do it anyway, and you don't need a job because you're earning stuff, I thought, why don't I just do that? I might have just done that. It's not that I don't like acting, because, like, I really do like acting, but there's a lot, like, how do I put this? Like, acting is like this really great party that lasts too long. Like, you're sort of having great fun most of the way, and at the end of it, like, oh no, that's too much work to get into character. This is getting really hard now. I've been kicked in the ribs 16 times now. Okay, let's just didn't we get a good shot or something like that? Like, I am kind of being a bit silly, but then again, I'm not. This is kind of, I guess how it is for me. I still really do like it, but it is work. Acting definitely is work. Yeah.
One of the greatest autobiographies I've ever read is David Niven's wonderful, his first autobiography, which is called The Moon is a Balloon.
Yes.
And it's got all these stories of the trials and travails, of what it was like to be in Hollywood in the 30s and 40s. He's got he found some camaraderie with Errol Flynn, where the two of them are sort of hanging out in Hollywood. And, Flynn's reputation as a womanizer is well earned. And Niven has a really great story about that. But he talks about how, there's so many ups and downs and ups and downs. And should I really do this? And, World War II comes along, and he gets pulled into the into the British Army. It's just, but again, do what you love, right? And that's the common theme of every actor's autobiography or biography I've ever read. There's just a passion that just pulls them right back into it. And I think we see that a lot with role playing games. I'm often the one here who says it's collaborative storytelling, right? That you're trying to build a story that everybody's going to remember and talk about for decades to come, when you have a really great adventure or a really great encounter or something with characters. And I certainly compare it to acting, but it's got a lot of comparable things.
Yeah. It's actually, I'm actually at Page at the Philadelphia GameCon in January. I toyed with the idea of having a seminar comparing acting to role playing, and just sort of saying what's the same, what's different about it. And so I'm going to see who's interested, and what I'm going to do there is just grab volunteers and see, and give them some exercises, and just to see how it all goes. Because I've been, like, I think in an odd way, like more recently, role playing has actually made me a better actor. Some things are similar, like when you make up sometimes when you have to make up an NPC on the fly, or even if you're prepping and you don't have a lot of time, and you need a bunch of NPCs, so you have to quickly go, oh, okay, how does this fit? How does this fit? And I find this it's actually useful because when I get an audition, like you never know what you're going to get. It's actually useful to develop the ability to make up a very detailed character like right away. And now for acting, like for an audition, I might have to do a lot more than I would. Like, okay, if I'm running a D&D game, I just need a few things. Okay, what's the guy's name? Okay, where's he from? You know, just a few things. Okay, what do they like? Why are they here? Maybe one or two things about their family. Like in acting, what you would have to do is expand that part about the family, have more of a backstory about that. You probably wouldn't need to know their weapon proficiencies or anything like that. But you know, it would kind of slot it in a different thing. But the similarity was that, oh, you have to come up with a convincing character very quickly. And so that actually was useful. And I ended up using some of the same tools, like some of the same list almost. Like say my list for, okay, if you want to come up with an NPC, these are things you do. And the list, okay, you have to have an audition, these are things you do. There's a lot of items that are the same. Like there's a bit of overlap, right? So yeah, so in a weird way, well, I guess it's not weird. In a way, so the role playing has helped me in acting. And I have this other quirk about acting. I look at it like experience levels, like level 1, you're doing this type of thing. Level 2, you're doing this type of thing. And I actually view it that way. It actually keeps me sane because acting is so much up and down. Like you can get a huge part 1 year, like you can be like in a series. I was in a series regular for 1 year. And then the next year, maybe I got 2 days or something. Right. So, but your skill level and your experience can grow steadily. And then the idea is that, okay, it's up and down, but hopefully you can sort of, improve your range so that your bottom end and your top end both kind of go up. And actually, I think viewing it as like distinct levels, right, has kind of made it easier for me to think about it. I mean, I don't know how real this is or not. It's just helpful for my brain,
So I've got two questions that come out of that. Number one is when you have a successful role and then you have a little bit of a struggle afterwards, does that mean you've had some levels drained by being attacked by your agent or a lich, or that's a drill? And then the other is that the higher you advance as you rank, which do you think? Do you hit like level 14 and you're a director, and then level 15 you're a producer, or vice versa? Which do you think actually has more power? Because frankly, the showrunners are like, these are the immortals.
Yeah.
These are the untouchables.
Yeah. It sometimes feels that way, but I think directing and producing, like they're kind of separate things, closely related but separate. I don't think they're not like what did they used to have those? Oh, what was it in third edition D&D? They had the prestige classes. Like they're not really a prestige class, although sometimes they can be approached that way. You get like 7, 8 levels of acting, then you slide into director, or you could just approach it from the beginning. I mean, these days, like directing, you can start. It depends what you think of as directing. These days, like if you take a phone or have a dog walking across the street, okay, you've made a nonfiction film. Then you put it up on like TikTok or Facebook or whatever. You've made a film. Okay. Now you make a more complicated film, something a little longer. Maybe you have an owner and their dog walk across the street, or you write a narrative. Dog turns at the owner, barks at him, and what's the problem, boy? And then over. You can just sort of keep building. So I'm getting rather long-winded now, am I? In terms of the lich, there are definitely liches in the film business. There are definitely. I can't name names because I'm not important enough to be able to name names and get away with it.
Yeah, I think you're okay. I think you're doing just fine. I don't think you have anything to worry about. But what was the show? I'm trying to think. Did you ever see did the TV show Action ever make it north of the border with Jay Moore playing the unbelievably sleazy television producer?
Oh my God, I haven't heard that. That is a great show. I forgot about it.
I have friends from California that said that there was no more accurate portrayal of the television and film industry than that series, which is why it got killed off at a year. Like this is the worst. This is the worst publicity for the industry ever, and it's it's just wonderful.
It's a great show. Yeah, I haven't seen it in years, but they just reminded me of it. It's amazing.
Oh,
how,
you'll hurt yourself laughing, and you can't even believe they ever got this on the air, right? That one of the characters is a call girl that the guy employs to get one of the writers to finish the script. You've got to finish the script, and he's like, "Well, I'm da 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 da," and she's like, "If you finish the script, this is on the table. I'll finish the script."
That was a great. That was Ileana. Oh God, what's her last name? Ileana. She's been in a lot. She's great. Ileana Douglas.
Yes, she's wonderful.
Yeah, she was awesome.
It was just spectacular.
And Jay Moore. Whatever happened to Jay Moore, man? Jay Moore's great. I haven't seen him in anything in a while.
Yeah, he's funny.
So
you still see him pop up.
Yeah, he's here and there, but yeah. So Ronin, what's your passion? What do you love to play now? What's the game that you're going to clear time on the deck and sit down at a table and?
Right now I just started a Call of Cthulhu campaign not too long ago, and I'm really loving it because we're going with the normal setting for the game, the 1920s, and I found that it's so much fun. It's so easy to draw on things, right? So I have things like, because I watched a lot of old films, like as part of the discussion in the games, a bunch of people were arguing about whether they want to see the new Douglas Fairbanks movie, because Robin Hood or something is coming out in October 1922, and it actually becomes part of the game. Like some of the stuff, you can just go on the internet and look up stuff. So I'm actually quite enjoying that and finding out stuff like, okay, well, how many people own cars? How would you travel through Arkham at night? Is there a trolley bus? Maybe not everyone's in it, but I'm having a lot of fun. And I found with Call of Cthulhu, what was really interesting, the last few sessions we've had, sometimes there hasn't been that many die rolls. Like things just kind of go a certain way. And I've kind of learned that, well, you don't always have to roll dice, because I come from a wargaming background originally. So, and everything's sort of like in that.
Be still my heart. No, please continue.
Oh, really? Oh, I wasn't sure if it was a positive or a negative. They would look like
I only have a couple of miniatures, just a couple. But yes. Yes, I when I lived in Calgary, I got pulled into a regular game of counter pushing, and I'm still in little PTSD here and there. So I wasn't so bad. I was playing Europa. I have some limits, but Europa Universalis.
Okay. I have not played that.
Walk away. Just walk
I have not. Really? Okay. Okay. All right. What did we play? I think. I'm not even sure. Like these days, this name of this game isn't even. It's one of those things they ban your post for. Like Third Reich was a game that I played a lot when I was
all those great Avalon Hill games. Yeah, we could spend hours talking about all of that. Were you an ASL guy? Were you an advanced squad leader guy?
I didn't really get into it. Like, I guess I never got out of squad leader. Like we hardly ever got out of the city. Like we had the first 3 scenarios. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I just couldn't find players to.
I can't imagine somebody doesn't want to spend 12 hours over a weekend just pushing counters around. I mean, the mind boggles at this. Does it get sexier? I don't think it could get sexier. Right?
Yeah, I mean that's why I talk about Third Reich. That was one of the few games where we actually finished. Oh, Republic of Rome. We had several sessions.
Wow.
Now
we actually finished a few sessions. That was kind of.
You're gonna have to get into a little thing we call chariot racing at North Texas next year. I don't know how to tell you this, but you need to play in one of the qualifiers because I mean.
Yeah. So it's based on the Circus Maximus Avalon Hill game, but Heavily edited by my brother and Doug Ray, who was one of the original co-founder of the con, and it has a full table. It is an absolute blast. It's it's man versus every other man on the table, and it turns out it's great. It's a great.
That and buying a used car are the only two forms of legalized gladiatorial combat left in the United States. Circus Maximus and buying an old Hyundai. That's it. There's the only two.
I forgot to ask you, Jim.
Okay.
Jim, I forgot to ask you, did you have your revenge this year on Inga?
No, I had terrible luck in the final. And so I eventually had to go on to get ready for the auction and things. And so I actually abandoned my chariot and got my guy off the table. But interestingly, Alberta's husband then took over my chariot and used it. And I don't know what I'm going to have when I get back to Texas next year. So it'll be very interesting to see.
One wheel and one horse left.
Yes, yeah. God only knows. Yeah. But really, Ronin, you have to get into one of the qualifiers. Okay. It's only one of the best experiences at the con. And it is a bloody gore fest of slaughter and mayhem.
Yeah, I did play Circus Maximus. Like Rob ran a game. He ran I played Circus Maximus and Gladiator this year. Yeah.
Oh, so you did. You were in it. Yeah, you were in it. Okay.
I didn't do that.
Because my brother was in it. So yeah, you absolutely were in it. Okay, good. I didn't know you were in it or not. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's too.
But I didn't you guys have a tournament, right? I didn't do. I just played on Sunday. It was like a game. We had about 14.
Oh, that was the Crash Smash. Yeah, you played Crash.
So you played the safety bumpers version. Yeah. That's like pool. That's like bowling with the bumpers.
I guess so.
Yes. That's
is it?
Yeah. That's pure carnage. That's not a race. That's like a bumper.
It's like the old movie Death Race 2000 with David Carradine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, it's great.
Oh, David. Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a throwback.
The Death Race that I saw was a Jason Statham movie. So
the original is a Russ Meyer movie, and you have to look it up because David Carradine plays Frankenstein, the driver that's supposed to be horribly disfigured. And there's a terrible scene where they're out on the highway.
Oh, right.
And one of his adoring fans throws herself in front of his car so that he can get the points for killing a pedestrian. It's pushing over the top. Wow. It and Rollerball painted all the dystopia that we were supposed to have, but we were so denied.
Yeah.
So, Rollerball's corporate society was inevitable.
Yeah.
So.
I met David Carradine.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, years ago I did. Do you remember when they had a Kung Fu sequel series? It was like Kung Fu: The Legend Continues.
There were two attempts at sequels. Yes.
Yeah, and that was like in the 90s in Toronto. Actually, that was a really interesting episode because I got to work with George Takei on that episode because we were the two bad guys. Like there was an episode called The Return of Sing Ling or something, right? And that Sing Ling was played by Ernie Reyes Jr., who was like really short guy but fantastic martial artist. And in the episode, me and George are the bad guys of the episode. So I met David. It was a really weird time because I also released my first CD. So like I got my first CD release from the manufacturer. It happened to be in Toronto, my driver was also David's driver. Like David didn't need his driver that day, so his driver was driving me, and he heard about my new CD releasing. So why don't we play it on David's stereo? I said, "Are you sure? Like I don't know him. I haven't met him. Are you sure that's okay?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'll be fine." So here we are in David's studio. He's got this big trailer. We put my CD in. It was instrumental music, right? It was like sort of instrumental, kind of relaxing music. It's
sure.
But anyways, he on, and Dave Carradine walks through the door and kind of looked at me like, "Who the hell are you?" And then the driver, because we hadn't met yet, so the driver wondered who I was, and I was like, "Am I really?" The guy is short. I guess he had a good relationship with David, and he thought it would be cool, and so he finally figured out who I was, and and he is of course he is not like the guy, right? Kwai Chang Caine or whatever. He's not like him. Like he actually kind of speaks more like this, like. Like I kind of talking, how you doing, man? And that was sort of that was David Carradine. That was, and he was taller than I expected and bigger than I expected. Somehow you watch Kung Fu on TV, I thought he was like a small, skinny guy, but then when I met him, I was like, oh.
He's he was a fit guy. He was a very fit guy. I have a friend who met him in California when Chuck Norris was just, Chuck Norris was one of the guys that was associated with Bruce Lee. And then that translated into having his own action movie career with Good Guys Wear Black and that whole series of films. And I had a friend who knew both Carradine and Norris and said these guys were just as fit as they could possibly be. They all came out of that original late 60s, early 70s martial arts scene in California, in Southern California.
Damn.
Kung Fu: The Legend Continues has lasted 4 seasons and 88 episodes. How have I not watched one of them ever?
So the problem is, the problem is, Mike, is that what's so interesting about that time in the mid 90s is that there's all this content. There's all these shows that were subsidized. In Canada, the Sci-Fi Channel is called Space. And it's owned by, there's one major conglomerate that owns a lot of the cable channels in Canada. And so you've got Earth Final Conflict, which was the Roddenberry vehicle. There's at least a dozen shows that came out of the Toronto television making scene, but a lot of them, because when they came south of the border, it just depended on if you had a UPN station that was going to carry them. Tech War is one that's very.
Oh damn! I forgot that.
You blink and you sort of forget about it because it's been 20 years since you saw Greg Evigan anywhere, and it's just one of those things that sort of slips the mind. Sorry, Greg Evigan fans.
Because this was I see, because it was Canadian content. Yeah, that's why I probably never saw it, because I probably didn't have it at that time. It was mid 90s was not.
Yeah, and if you watch any of the so I moved to Mississauga in 98, right? So this is all primetime stuff and airing there and so on. And what's great is you see all these Canadian actors and actresses. It's like British television. You see the same actors and actresses over and over and over again because they just get pulled into a stable of people and, we need her here, we need her here, we need him here, and so on and so forth. So have you watched Landman? You must, Mike. Have you seen Landman?
Oh, absolutely, okay. Yes, of course. So, by the way, that's probably first of all, Billy Bob Thornton's genius in it anyway. But that I've had people look at that and we're like, "Yep, that's Texas."
Right. So the lawyer that lives in his house, the lawyer that lives in his house, the older fellow who's just trying to avoid his teenage daughter in the bikini. So that's the Canadian actor Colin Fiore, who is in just about every other show and movie in Canada. I mean, really and truly, he's had a 35, 40-year career. If he hasn't won a Gemini, I don't know how. But he's just,
like he was in Thor, of all things. I think he was the Frost Giant in Thor.
Yes, he was the Frost Giant in Thor, and he has won. He has won a.
Loki's real dad, I guess. Yeah. Yes.
But there's all this sort of stuff that sometimes it lands and it's a big success south of the border. Sometimes it isn't, and that's the way. It's the nature of the beast, right? So,
Orphan Black is the one I remember. That's a Canadian show, right?
Yeah.
Orphan Black was a really good Canadian
show.
Yes,
but for as good as Orphan Black, then there's things we don't talk about like Lex, and nobody talks about Lex, right? Like, it's just. Barry Bostwick is in it the first season or the first episode, and it's just
you're not selling me. You're not selling me.
Yeah.
So Ronin, one of the most interesting things about Call of Cthulhu is you hit the nail right on the head, where it can be very cerebral, right? You can have a night of gaming without a lot of, for lack of better words, murder hobo action, so on and so forth. If anything, I really like that just because it prolongs the existential dread that's slowly building.
Right.
So, that's the best stuff. That's the stuff that just, So, so you're late to Call of Cthulhu. Do you know that actually, because you're in Vancouver, right? You're in BC, right? So two of the pagan publishing folks have landed in Vancouver Island, in that neck of the woods. Two of the folks from pagan publishing, Dennis Detweiler and oh God, I think of his other name, but they're local to you. You should sort of poke around and sort of see. I think you could do a lot worse than to get into something one of them's running and so on and so forth. Have you read any of the pagan publishing stuff? Delta
No,
Green?
I'm getting into it. Like, I mean, I've got a whole backlog of stuff to read, but yeah, I'm just getting into it. I'm going to be running an adventure at a couple of cons for it. So like, and I might dip a toe into actual play. I'm still toying with that because I've never really done it. It just, and people have asked me like, why don't you do actual play? Like, well, I don't know. It's like, I think it's because like of how I started in gaming. I mean, like the idea of people watching me play D&D or play games is still a bit foreign to me, even after seeing it. Yes, I've seen it done. I've seen it many years, but so I'm going to dip a toe in it. And that's one of the reasons actually I switched over into Call of Cthulhu, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do an actual play of a D&D thing. I was looking for some kind of game where I could play similar characters to what I might play on TV. Like the NPCs would be drawn from almost like the same, the same thing. And so I thought, and then someone's recommended, why don't you try Call of Cthulhu? Because you could set it at any time period you want. Like right now, like we're just playing in the 1920s, but the adventure that I want to come up with will be modern day. And it's actually set in the British Museum because 2 years ago on vacation, we spent like 10 days or something in the British Museum. So I just set it there, and I would, and I'm just curious to see how it actually runs. If it turns out I like actual play a lot, I might try that. I might set that up. Find a group of professional actors and do it, and just to see how it goes.
Well, I think
I'm a little. Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, please. Sorry.
No, but I'm a tiny bit hesitant because, like right now, I'm very clear. Okay, acting, or like I've done a bit of directing and a bit of writing. Like anything in film and television, I like it, but it's work. Role-playing games, it's not work. Even if I wrote something for a company, and I've dipped a toe back into writing again, more RPG stuff. Even if I do that, it's still my fun. It's not my work. There's a different mindset to it. Once I go into trying actual play, it's like then it becomes blurred. This thing is halfway between work and hobby. But I'm so curious about it. I'm just curious to see, I guess, if I could do it, or if I could sort of bring a bunch of actors I know into it, and just to see how it would go.
I think one of the things that's just by being adjacent, Joe Manganiello has a regular group of people that he plays D&D with from the industry. Other actors and people who are in the industry in one way or shape or form, and some are in front of the camera, some are behind the camera. And I think the common thread that binds all of us, no matter what our background or whatnot, is this love of role playing and the things that make it all so much fun. I think you just start to assemble. You're living in one of the most beautiful cities above the border for us. Vancouver is absolutely one of the two major hubs for television. Well, three if we want to include Halifax, but we don't want their heads to swell. But between Ontario and BC, you've just got a tremendous amount of folks in the industry and so on. I think you just start putting together a regular game and see who shows up at your table, and then figure it out from there. Don't try to force a thing. More than anything else, just let it grow organically.
Yeah. That sounds more fun. I might go that route, but I think. Hear me out, Stargate.
Oh my God!
Maybe
we open the Stargate, and all the awful things come through it.
Well, that would be accurate.
This is very, very true. Right.
Yeah.
I actually I had a moment of Lovecraftian horror earlier today because Lovecraft was always the
Right.
thing that walks between the stacks or that which cannot be named or the unspeakable terror of blah blah blah. Well, I had to do battle today with the terrible clog in my son's bathroom sink.
Ooh.
The less said of it, the better. But it was just a festival of smells and suspicious things and hair. And by the time I was done, I was down 2d6 sanity. Ugh. Oh.
Yeah. The horror in the
Oh,
pipes.
yes.
Okay.
Or more like the horror in the sink trap. And it was just terrible. Terrible. Ugh. So
Yeah, no. Rach wants me to work on the bathroom tub. I'm like, it drains, not quickly, but it
you
drains.
long hairs, I don't even understand it, right?
Yeah.
Keep it in regulation, buddy. Keep it in regulation. So Ronan, if
we had a problem with our sink too. For it finally got cleared out. It got pretty awful. We pulled the pipe right out of the wall, and the plumber had to come in. Tons of Drano and other things.
The horror.
And then we got this bottle given by the plumber. This sort of like super acid thing. If you pour it in the wrong way, you'll lose a finger. That type of, and that eventually kind of got rid of the problem. So now my sink works beautifully now. Like if I unplug the thing, the water actually goes down. It's one of the pleasures of modern living.
So you spent longer in the British Museum than I did. I the last time we were in London, I think I spent 2 days. Yep. So what was your favorite thing in the British Museum? What was the thing that just stopped you cold and just? Oh
yeah, it's the Egyptian section. Actually, there's one night where I think it was Thursday night. You can stay later. Like it opens until like quite late. I think it's almost like 10 or something. And Egypt is always crowded. It's packed. So we thought, okay, if we go in the evening, people are not going to go to a museum in the evening. So we're going to go and look at all the Egypt stuff in the evening, as there will be fewer people. And it did work, but it got really creepy because the last hour between 9 and 10, we're in this room filled with all the mummies, all the dead things, and there's hardly anybody there. It's like, oh, I'm not really sure.
Oh, and the sarcophagi, all the sarcophagi are just, they're spectacular.
No,
go ahead. Go ahead.
No. Were you in that room where they had all the sarcophagi, like from the various eras? Yeah, up on I don't forget what floor it's on up on. Yeah, that's where we were at night, and in that last hour before closing.
It's just spectacular. It really is. It's just wonderful.
Yeah.
I don't have enough good words for it. It's just great. It and the Imperial War Museum, the Imperial War Museum, you literally walk into a gallery and it's cabinet after cabinet after cabinet of people's medals on display. And the only way that you can get through it in a reasonable time is if as you're walking along, the only cases you stop at either have a Victoria Cross or a Field Marshal's baton, because otherwise there's just no way. You'll just get caught up in every single case. And it's just brutal.
Right.
It's absolutely brutal. So let's see. I had something else I was going to ask. I'm looking. I think I have some pictures on my phone, but I'm taking a look while we're sort of poking around here. There's my tower pictures.
So I want to ask you a question, Ronan. So when did you start to decide? I'm going to hit some cons and see what's going on here, because you've been kind of a regular on the scene now the last couple of years. When did you decide that this is something you wanted to just try? I mean, did you always go to cons? Have you been going to cons since you were a kid? Or
no. Actually, I know. God forbid, but I had stopped role playing like about, I don't know, I think the 2000s or something. I somehow had stopped doing it. And then on and off sporadically, I was playing. And it was Ron Meschker at Page who brought me out to Page. Like the first year was up. He invited me out to be a special guest. Because, well, the way I met Ron was I won some of his auctions, right? And I was in Nova Scotia filming something at the time. And like normally you have to send it how is it? The PayPal has a specific address. So I had my home address, right? But I was filming a TV show. I wouldn't be home for 4 months. And I wanted to see my stuff soon. I didn't want to wait 4 months, right? So it was a different address than what was on the PayPal. So I had to clear that up with him. Could you please send it here? And so at first he wanted to know why, and I explained that I acted. And that's actually what I didn't, and I couldn't. That's why I was in Halifax of all places. That's where I was.
I have sprained my liver in Halifax
time.
on 2 different occasions.
Wow.
Start at the top of the hill and just work your way down. But Ronin, you know what the saddest thing is about Halifax? I don't know if you're aware of this or not.
Yeah.
The most depressing thing ever is they closed Pita Boys. Pita Boys is no longer in downtown Halifax. The great restaurant that was open till 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning, where you could eat after all the bars closed, it's no longer there.
Right.
I'm so depressed.
Yeah, the city closes down early. The last time I recall, like it just shut down early. But how I got into the cons was like I met Ron there, and he found out what I did, and then I think it was like it was a few months or a year later when he was first setting up Page. He's just messaged me and said, "Hey Ronan, like if I twisted your rubber arm, would you come out to Page?" And said, "Oh, what's Page?" And this was like about a year or so before he set it up, and he told me, "Oh, it's happening in January." And I thought, that's rather soon. Like, I don't know if I can, but I misunderstood him because he meant a year. He meant a year, January. Because I was asking about, like, well, when do I have to get there? Like, do I have to get there? And he said, well, that'll be a bit soon. You want to get here a year in advance? Oh, a year. And we sorted that out. And I had not been into a con in a long time. I had never been a special guest, so I didn't really know how this worked. Like in the film business, if they fly you out somewhere, it's quite a surreal experience. You know, you get like when I did the Center in Nova Scotia, not just me, but my wife, especially my wife, she got like a first class travel ticket. Like, we experienced first class in a way that I didn't know existed before, right? And I thought, do they do that at cons? Can they afford that? I absolutely just really had no idea, right? Because I had been to Gen Con when I was a kid, like years ago.
Oh my God!
And I've been.
There he is. He's back.
Oh,
we were worried we lost you, Ronan.
Did you? Oh, okay. So that was, and then Ron kind of filled me in. Oh, what do I actually do with these cons? Oh, I run games. Okay, I'll run games. Because I'm guessing, I don't know. I'll have to ask Ron. But I think the reason he asked me to come out was because I kind of inhabited both worlds. I actually had written for the RPG industry, not a lot. I got a resume about this long, but I actually had done some legit work back in the 90s, and that was also in acting. So there was this kind of a hybrid thing. He thought was kind of neat, right? And I did often scratch my head wondering, why am I here? Like, why am I here? Like, there are people like like Frank Menser. Okay, yeah, I know why he's here. I all these names, and yeah, okay, these are people I've heard of, right? And why am I actually here? I thought, okay, well, just enjoy it and run some games, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought, wow, and I got some really good feedback from people about enjoying how I ran things, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then I think it was after that, I can't recall exactly how the events played out, but I went back to Page again, and then I ended up going to Arnicon and Gamehole, right? And then this year I went to North Texas for the first time, right? So I think that's how it all kind of played out. So it was really Ron who kind of just pulled me into this world. Like, I didn't know a thing about it, but I think it's odd, but I think I finally found like my group of crazy. This is the type of crazy that suits me. I think this is actually where I belonged all this time, but I don't know.
And isn't it funny how it's like you were never gone?
Yeah.
Right? It just picks right back up. It's
Pardon?
like you were never gone. It just picks right back up, and you find your beat. And, yeah, it's just great. it is. It's just wonderful. I think a lot of people
Yeah, I mean,
go through that.
there was a lot I didn't actually know that before Page. I was thinking, like, well, do I bring my miniatures or not? Like, do we use miniatures? And I thought, and then I was just told, it's up to you. Do whatever you want. Oh, okay.
As long as you come with
And
dice,
then-
you're
and
usually
then-
okay. If you bring your dice, that's the.
Right.
I always laugh when people come to cons
Yeah.
like, man, I forgot my dice. I'm like, you had one job, literally one job. Your dice, and you forgot your dice. But I'll sell you some. But still, I'm telling you, you had one job.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I have dice with me when I'm not playing.
Yeah,
I don't know how you
exactly. Yeah,
travel without
absolutely.
dice.
Yes, you have to.
so now, does your
Yeah.
wife play, or
Yeah.
does she just
Yeah.
think it's weird?
No, she plays. She's my main player.
Wow.
She's a really good player, actually.
Awesome.
Holy shit, Ronan, you hit the lottery.
I guess so. Actually, she's been invited to cons as well. Like at Page, like she gets invited, same as me. And they even said to her, like, if I'm like, I had said that the only reason I won't make it is if I get cast in something and we're shooting during the con. That's the only reason I would miss the con. But they said if that ever happened, Marianne's invited anyway. Kind of like, screw
Your
you.
wife will be the
Just
bigger
wait.
guest star. Trust me, it's just gonna happen, right?
Yeah. I've heard people say, she's the real Jim. Yeah, like she's the one that you want to play with. Rowan and I, he's a transportation guy or something.
No.
But no, she's a great player. I lean on her quite a bit, actually. Like when I'm developing things, I do sort of run things by her. I only run by too much. Like normally, I have a guaranteed play tester. Like in an early version of an adventure, I have like this one test player that I can always beg to play. Please play this, and then. But I think. How did that happen? I think when we were dating is when I started introducing her to a game, and she thought it was weird at first, but once we started playing, she had a lot of fun. I think we played like a D&D scenario. I was just making it up on the fly, and she ended up being like a first level fighter that mugged people along the way. She would pick on a peasant and mug them, and that was her first character.
Nice.
So a murder hobo. That's pretty
And
good.
I think she went
awesome.
to a murder hobo.
Most women turn into that.
And then she'll go to store and haggle with the storekeepers, and that was the start of that campaign. Yeah.
Somebody left the back door open.
Oh yeah, and she's just sitting across the table
Laughing
here.
at us, I hope.
So I have to be careful what I say.
Good.
Yeah, she's laughing
Good.
at it.
She should really
murder
realize how
hobo
incredibly
thing.
rare she is. She's like a sparkly unicorn.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes. Some of
Yeah.
us don't have spouses that are
it's
supportive and interested in our hobbies and are, in fact, Witchfinder generals looking to burn it all.
No, Jim. My wife is extremely interested in my hobby. She's interested in how much this stuff's worth and can I sell it. That's how she's very interested. She's not here right now, so I can get away with this.
Yeah.
Right.
Usually listens to the show. She's at church tonight, but yeah,
So
she's
you'll
very
have
interested.
Ronan, you'll have to convince your wife to drive over to Calgary, right? You should say, well, I just want to see what it's like. Dodge the stampede, but you're going to have to go to you're going to have to go back to the Sentry Box, and
she's been there.
Oh, nice.
Yes,
She's been there. She helped me carry out a couple of bags.
I can hear the joy coming over the internet.
Yeah, well, you see, acting is a very much up and down business. So, like in years of lean, I don't
Right.
collect as much. In years of plenty, I collect. Like seriously.
Yes. So,
And so when we get that, like there's a built-in bonus. If I ever get like a really good part that lasts for a while, I am buying something somewhere. It'll happen. like I got my wood grain box finally
Nice.
a couple of years ago because of that. I did a show called finally, I've been hunting one down and I got a third print and I thought, good enough, third print, good enough. It's there on the shelf. I have like a third, a fifth, a sixth, and a seventh, and I think that's good enough. I don't need to fill in.
I was auctioning at Gen Con about 6 or 7 years ago, and we had a third printing come up, and we had a couple of what I would
Right.
call the usual suspects that were sort of back and forth. But there was a young couple. They were about fifth or sixth row over to my left, which is right on the right side of the audience. And it was great because the husband was bidding, and then they got outbid, and then there was this, he had hit the limit and he pulled his card down, and he was accepting, but his wife sort of leaned over, and you didn't have to hear it, you just heard her say, "Keep going, it's okay. I know like they had agreed on an amount."
Wow.
But he shot his hand back up and won, and they were so ridiculously happy. It's one of my favorite third printing brown box stories ever. That they were, she was in tears because he was so happy, and he was so happy that she said yes. And after the auction was over, they were like, "We didn't think we were going to win. We didn't think we were going to win," and they were just over the moon. And
do you remember the price? Do you remember the price by any chance, Jim? Because you're usually pretty good.
I do. So they dropped out originally at 28, and I think they took it at 32, and now that's just ludicrous, right?
Yeah, that's not bad at all. That's actually right now. That's actually in the ballpark. That's such a good deal now. As a matter of fact.
Well, that's just it. But that's 7 or 8 years ago, and that's before it's before the Strong Museum is the one who really put the brown box through the stratosphere. It took 2 bidders, but the Strong Museum winning at 28,000 for the one very, very nice one, and then all of a sudden that brought the entire market up. And so this past week, about a week and a half ago, Bill Meinhardt won a 4th or 5th printing that was still in the shrink. Now these have been trading $5,000-$6,000. He got it for less than that, and the irony is it is actually one that Paul Stormberg had sold several years ago, the year after Gary died, for Gale. It was one of his comp copies that was in his basement.
Wow.
And the guy had bought it from Stormberg when white boxes weren't for selling for that much, and it's not like Gary opened it and played with it. He just had it in the shrink. And so Bill won it last week and was very, very happy to have it. It's not that he doesn't already have one, but now he actually has one that was owned by Gary. So,
Jim, you know what the market for white boxes used to be? I used to own 15. That's how. If you paid $150, you're paying too much.
That's right.
And so I got them. I remember I bought Doug's too. He was selling 2. I bought them for like $50 each when he first. So this is what, 2008, 2007.
Yeah.
You could buy those. You could have it for $100. I had 15 white boxes. Now I only have 3 now. I couldn't. I couldn't justify keep on, or I couldn't justify it to my wife keeping.
There you go.
It's like, this is the same box. You have so many of them. It's the same one. I go, but they're all a little different. There's like slight. That didn't work. It didn't work at all.
Well, and what is great is when you have this camaraderie, right? When you actually can talk about this sort of stuff with other people who appreciate this. I have a wood grain that's over in my cabinet, and when I got it, I just sat there looking at it because it was finally mine. One of the great collectors that we know, another Canadian from Calgary is Jeff Emery, and he had somebody.
Yes,
so he has a great story about how somebody offered him what he felt was a ridiculous amount of money for a wood grain, and he had the wood grain and he had the check. And he had the wood grain and he had the check, and they were both sitting on the table, and he kept looking at it. And finally he thought, if I sell this, I won't have it anymore, and I can't sell it. And it's the smartest thing he ever did, because the price now versus what he was offered is just ludicrous. It's just crazy. So,
Right. What does a third print go for now? Like I'm a little out of the market now. I haven't been.
The dish is important too. Obviously.
Yeah. So 1 second, and hold on. I'm looking up something while we're Mike, you talk for a second while I do a little bit of digging.
So we actually in North Texas we actually sold a third print white brown box one year. It was in near mint condition. Bill Meinhardt, as Bill Meinhardt will do, said, "Well, the only copy I see better than this is my copy," which he will tell you. And it sold. This is like 2014 or 15. It only sold for $3,000, and it was a near mint copy. And I think now. It'd be worth at least twice that, if not way more, probably 10 grand at least. But I think a decent third print, if you get it for under 10 grand, Heritage Auctions just had one also. I'll look that up in just a second. I think it was a third print. I want to believe it went for 18,000, but it may have been may not have been a third print. I'm looking it up right now. But yeah, even the third prints, because it's quote unquote affordable, right? A third print isn't a first print, and so it's considered affordable to a lot of people. But yes, we actually auction more often in North Texas.
Yeah, because I won mine for $5,000.
Jeff Emery won it.
Yeah. My third was $5,000, and it was not like it's not pristine condition. Like it's good condition for its age.
Yeah, but I don't think you can ever beat yourself up about the condition, right? That's the thing I would say more than anything else. Don't do that, because then you start to get into the chasing perfect. I was trying to. I actually helped somebody. I helped somebody buy a third printing wood grain that was in really, 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 really nice shape about a year or two ago, and I think the final closing price was 20, but it was very nice. It was one of the nicest I think I've seen. But that's pretty. The markets, if you have something really, really nice, and literally somebody had gotten it and put it away and never actually played with it and had simply put it in a box and left it in the box and didn't touch it. And then when they decided they didn't want it, they gave it to somebody else who put it in a box and put it away and didn't touch it. And it had managed to survive for that long.
So I found the auctions, the Heritage Auctions. It was January. Third print. Looks like it's a little beat up. Went for 14,000.
Yeah, that's
Heritage might be a little inflated. Because Heritage Auctions gets the I don't know what you'd say, not the super serious collectors, more the people like, hey man, Heritage has a brown box. I'm going to pay whatever it costs to buy a brown box, and they may not realize that you can find. Yeah, it's kind of beat up too. It's a little beat up. So that's a good price. 14,000. I think that's. Wow, that's a pretty ambitious price there. I had sold that.
No, but that's again, right? It's rarity. It's something where think about, Ronan, how long you looked for yours, and you everybody's internals on this is different. How much are you willing to pay? What condition are you willing to compromise? Are you willing to compromise on condition? Are you willing to compromise on cost? What's your break point? And I know somebody who's into comic books, and they will not touch a comic book below a graded 9.8. Just won't even look at it.
Come on, man.
But this is somebody that had 40 some boxes of comics, sold them all, and then took that money and bought 12 slabbed comics, and that's his comic collection on the wall. And once a year, he picks the one he doesn't like, and he sells it, and he takes the proceeds, and he buys another one. But he will not put anything but a 9.8 on the wall.
Wow, is that?
And it's all, like his interests change and so on and so forth. But he had an early Fantastic Four, like within the first 4 or 5 years of the Fantastic Four. He had a 9.8, whatever the Fantastic Four issue was. But it wasn't a key issue of Galactus or anything like that. But he decided that it just wasn't worth it. Right. Somebody was willing to pay more, and he sold it and got rid of it and put something else on the wall.
So they had Heritage had 2 brown boxes for sale. They've only sold 2 ever. One third print I told about was 14,000. There was a second print that sold in May for 13,000. It was a little more beat up.
Yeah,
but I think they're both acceptable. That seems to be about the range, I would think.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good range. It's way out of my price range. Just put it that way. So
yes.
But it didn't used to be. If I'd have been smarter 15 years ago, I guess we'd all been smarter, right?
Well,
yeah. Yeah, you never know. I mean, like I remember this orange B3 that came my way years ago, right? And they wanted $200 for it, and I thought, no, that's too expensive.
The last one I saw sold for about 10 grand. It was a shrink wrap for 10 grand. I think that even went cheap. 10 grand. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just shouldn't even talk about this.
Memories.
It's just gonna hurt. It
does hurt because there's always look. The thing is, if you buy and sell, so I've been buying, selling, trade online since '92, since the internet first was up, and you know, you can't get yourself in the rut. Jim knows this too. You can't get yourself in the rut of saying, well, it would be worth this much now if I held on to it, because you just can't treat collecting and buying and selling that way. You have to say, did I get the best price I could at the time for this item? And was everybody happy? Yes. Then you just move on, because everything's always going to be worth more, right? It's always going to be worth more. You're always going to kick yourself for something. And unless it was me selling Valiant comics in the 1990s. I feel good about that because they crashed. But other than that, yes, I've always felt bad about different sales. I was just telling my wife the other day about I had a Blade first appearance that I sold years ago that I kind of wish I had now, but I don't. So,
well,
you have to scrub your mind. You have to scrub your mind of.
I think one of the most interesting things about your coming back into gaming and discovering shows and so on is how much things have changed. You know, Gen Con has become Con has become the San Diego Comic-Con, right? Where there's just so many people. It's just a crush.
Right.
But the real sweet spot are regional shows, you know, Game Hole, North Texas. These are just amazing shows where, you know, Alex does such a great job of having food trucks, and North Texas has food trucks. You're not going to starve during a show.
Right.
And it's just a treat. It really, really is. And you play with nice people. I always joke that the ratio of decent people to peckerhead at the small shows is like 1 out of 1,000, and they're doing pretty good. It's just great. It really, really is. It's the second renaissance of gaming. It really, really is, with the internet to boot.
Yeah, the North Texas, like I think it was so lovely that there's food. I mean, I can sit at my table and say, can I have one of those tacos? that was just amazing. You didn't have to stop gaming. You just game or eat the games.
I'm actually surprised more cons don't do that, but also it's kind of a hassle for a bigger con. It's something that's easier to do with a small con than it is a bigger con. You don't. I mean, a bigger con. I don't know how many serving girls you'd have to make that actually work. Probably too many to even make it practical.
Right. So. And the venue has to have food on the venue for that to work. Yeah. Which some just don't have. But North Texas was great. That's where I got to meet Ronin myself. Actually, the Midnight Auction is what I think brought everybody together. I mean, if you can't bond over Mike dressed as a devil, what?
I believe that this is going to lead to an after the Zoom call discussion with Ronin and his wife.
I'm not going to go into any details.
Let's leave the details few and far between. Let's simply encourage him to bring his wife and let the shenanigans play out. Now, Ronin, you do need to tell her that there is actually a wives' luncheon. I think Jen hosts a wives' luncheon that's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then they have the luncheon's on Saturday, I think, and the women's game is on Sunday morning.
Yeah, my wife she went to the luncheon. The luncheon was pretty well attended this year. I believe there was 30 wives there, or is that too many? I have to ask her. But Jen might know. Jen would know. She's in the chat. But yeah, it's taken off pretty well.
It's all right.
See, the thing is, Marianne's like, she's a straight ahead gamer. She's one of us. Like, you know. So, well, she can be. Yeah, actually, her first probably.
I love that we're talking about her, and she's just off camera, right? Like, I envision Marianne sharpening knives right now.
Oh dear.
Oh no, we've been Oh no! You see, the thing is, what keeps me alive is once in a while I book a good enough role to put her on a first-class flight, and that's sort of keeps me alive.
I went to Africa a few years ago, and if you're going to do that kind of long haul, this is where you just save up to break
Right.
down and buy the tickets. And the most
Right.
unexpected but great surprise of the entire trip, right? So we flew from Calgary to Toronto, Toronto to Paris, Paris to Kenya. And the leg of the trip from Paris to Kenya, we were on an African airline, and I can't think of the name of it. But once you got into the seats, right, once you're in first, they give you this little welcome bag, and it includes socks with little lion's paws on the bottom. They're grippy socks, but instead of stripes or anything else, they're little paws. And that was one of the best souvenirs of the entire trip, is that, for the next year, the three of us all had our little grippy lion paw socks. So you should hold out for that, Marianne.
Yeah, Gary says that they will
Lion
code
paws, did you hear
for
that?
travel as well.
Okay.
Now, just so you know, so Gary
Oh, wow.
has an issue with letters.
Yeah.
He either adds extra letters and badges become badgers, or he has a problem with ours. So, in this case, he left it out.
That's no, that's very generous. Like the missing R doesn't bother me. It's fine. Yeah. If you miss the R for my name, I guess I'm Onan. Onan.
Onan.
Onan.
I know that sounds great.
Onan Godfather. Yeah.
The Games Workshop store in Philly had a kid who had a gigantic corn army that he had been painting for a year, and he had spent all this time on a standard bearer. And the standard bearer, he had dropped the R by accident, so it read "Blood for the Blood God, Skulls for the Thone." And for the next month, the staff would relentlessly drop R's around him, and it didn't help that his name was Corey. So they would just say, "Hey, Coey, how are you?" And he'd be like, "I hate you."
Oh no.
Gary, we love you, man. We love you.
Well, that's awesome.
Because we love you, Gary.
Right.
Yeah.
We bust a knee because we love you.
And notice I didn't join in, Gary. By the way, I didn't join these guys. I object. I firmly object to this line of joking.
All right.
Have our back there, sir.
So Ronin, what's next? What's next on the professional side? What's next on the gaming side? What are you heading into next?
Oh, okay. So I got a part in a TV show. I've signed an NDA, so I can't say what show it is. But I'm growing out my hair and a pathetic attempt at a beard for the show for the viewing. If my beard isn't good enough, they might have to give me like a fake beard. But it's
excellent.
I'm looking forward to that. And for gaming, I'm actually going to write again. There was a game called Mutant from way back when a couple of the players in Dave Arneson's Blackmore campaign actually came up with it. It was pitched to 2SR, but it was not accepted. Some of the Mutant's ideas eventually found their way, I think, into Metamorphosis Alpha and into Gamma World. And so I'm working with a company, the same guys that did the Secrets of Blackmore video.
Okay.
So yeah. So Griff and Chris and they're
Is that Griff? Yeah, that's Griff, right? Yeah,
it's Griff. Yeah. So they're going to put out Mutants, or like a historical kind of version of it, and they hired me to write an introductory adventure that for it. So now I'm looking through Mutant, and I'm sort of figuring out. It's an interesting challenge because the question is, okay, do you want to bring back the idea of old school role playing, old school sci-fi role playing, and the way it was played in the 70s? Maybe this is like pre-Traveler, so like if you want to bring back that vibe, how exactly would I set the adventure? So I've been kicking around ideas of how to do it. Kind of a hex crawl, kind of not. I'm just sort of riffing on ideas of how to do it. So for my next cons, I'm going to be running like a portion of the adventure, because the way I envision the adventure is it's actually a bit of a mini setting, and that it would help people get into the game quickly, like sample characters, a bit of an explanation of how to do things. But there would be this one section of it that could be kind of like a quest, and so that I'm going to extract that chunk and run it at the cons. I think the first con I'm going to run it is at Arnicon, then I'm going to run it at Game Hole, and then at Page, and maybe in North Texas next year, depending on what I might just throw some ideas at Mike and Gary and just say, okay, well, which ones will fly the best at North Texas? I wasn't sure if I was going to keep running my Shadowrun game, because I've run it a lot. Over 30 years or so, I've run it a lot. I wasn't sure, but I was going to stop running it, like the adventure that I wrote. But this year at North Texas, there were some super fans that were so enthusiastic about it, and I thought, oh, I hadn't realized that. I think there were some like super Shadowrun fans for the first, second edition, kind of a completist fans, and so now they've gotten this book signed by this guy, and I'm like the one guy that's left on that list, and I was kind of like really blown away by how much they were into this stuff that we wrote 30 years ago. So I don't know. I might do more Shadowrun again. I don't know. But anyways,
people ask about Shadowrun a lot. That's a very well represented game at North Texas. I don't think we get as many games. We don't get enough people running it. Let's put it that way, because a lot of people.
And I think all these games go through cycles. There's an up-down cycle to all of it, and I think one of those things that you do is sort of, do you have something that's really gonna run the way you want? I could go the rest of my life without ever hearing anybody as a character say the word chummer. I think I could go the rest of my life without ever hearing that. But I think there's a lot of the elements of that would resonate really, really well. I just think you have to, is it going to be a heist? Is it going to be a heist adventure? Is it going to be, are you going to have it play over 4 days? I had a friend who ran a Shadowrun version of Ocean's 11, and just as silly and over, like the Brad Pitt character was an orc, and so on and so forth, and they just had a ball with it. But it was a lot of work, and you had to have the right people that really wanted to get involved with that. I don't know. I think you just do what you want, and the great thing about North Texas is, even if you have a empty seat or two, you're gonna find people who fill it, right? You're gonna find people who need a path.
Oh, sure, yeah,
and that's the best.
Right.
Well, the thing about North Texas too is that people will play anything. I mean, pretty much anything there gets played. There's very few games that end up with nobody playing. It's usually every game ends up being full about the time they get run, or if nothing else, they have enough people to run it. But I mean, you can never go wrong with the classic stuff. Obviously, just regular D&D. But the two games. So one of the games we get asked for the most that's actually run the least is Traveler. For some reason, Original Traveler is just a black hole. Nobody runs that very often. And when they do, the game fills up immediately, just because I think a lot of people would like to try to play Original Traveler. There's just so few people out there that run the game that that's always been one people say, yeah, you guys need more Traveler. Like, we can't find anybody to run Traveler. I mean, nobody really runs the original game. And I think and then I'll say the other one that we always hear about is I think Shadowrun. People always want a Shadowrun game. I think Jeff Webb runs a Shadowrun game every once in a while. We just don't get enough people that run Shadowrun. And so that's another one that people always ask about. For years, we had people ask about Boot Hill, but now we have Boot Hill is very well represented in North Texas. We have a Boot Hill game every year now. We've had that now. That was one of Doug's things. He got that going several years ago. He asked Steve Winter and Alan Hammock if they would run a Boot Hill game every year, and I think they've kind of switched off. I know Alan ran one this year.
It is a bloodthirsty affair, and it is not for the weak of heart.
Yeah.
Boot Hill. I was doing a little deep dive in that recently, Jim. It's really not a role playing game. It really it's because you're gonna die. You're gonna die. The first gunfight, everybody dies.
Alan Hammock's Boot Hill game had statistically off the chart amount of groin shots. Like literally, I lost my character to groin shots. Another guy lost him to groin shots. I'm like, how many shots to the groin can one game have?
That's something they don't tell us about the Old West
in
enough.
the corner laughing hysterically, like,
groin shot.
God, it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal.
You read about it, and really, it's not a game meant to be role played because really every combat you're in can be your last combat easily. And if you look at the history of the Blooms and how he created everything, it was really more. It belongs more to the wargaming history, I think, than it does to the role playing. Yeah. And they attempted to kind of make it role playing, but it's just kind of a hex counter role playing or war game.
Truthfully, Boot Hill, the role playing game, did not exist until the 3rd edition of Boot Hill.
Right.
Steve Leonard, the person, and Steve's great story on that is that they needed to do it to renew the copyright, so they did a print run, but he poured all this effort into making it a great game. And they were irate. TSR's managers were irate because they had to print it again. It was selling so well.
Oh,
that sums up the gaming industry so well that the curse of success. Oh, we're making too much money. Damn it! We'll have to print it again to satisfy.
The 3rd edition is really the only role-playing edition of that game. It really is. It's well worth hunting up if you're a Boot Hill fan. The great thing about Boot Hill is you can accumulate an entire Boot Hill collection. It's not impossible. There's 5 modules. There's an Adventure and Dragon magazine. There's the 2 digests, and then and then the box set, and then you have the 3rd edition. That's it. You've got every Boot Hill.
So before you go any further, Marianne is going to tackle Ronin before he begins to get interested, because when I say it's the golden age of Western miniatures and buildings, and Ronin goes, "Oh, really? That sounds cool." That's when Marianne will be appearing on the game.
I forgot about the miniatures. Oh, the miniatures.
No. Yeah, you don't understand, Marianne. Like she painted about half the miniatures. Oh, are we frozen?
I believe that you're not really married, and that you are going into the American trope of my Canadian wife. Because this is too good to be true.
Marianne,
no. Don't get somebody you hired to just appear on camera now. That's just mean. Don't kill him. Unbelievable. So I'll tell you just a quick story. I'll just tell you.
I ran a brief campaign. Like we've played, and it devolved into comedy because we had some of the dumbest criminals ever.
You know what you should do, Ronin?
It's the apple dumpling game.
I'll tell you what you should do, Ronin. You should run a Boot Hill game where every character is somebody from Heartland. But they're slightly twisted, right?
Another Canadian long-running Canadian show.
It's another long-running. Right. If you've got a daughter that likes Briar horses, trust me, she's watching Heartland. But you should run a Boot Hill game where all the characters are characters from Heartland, but they're the evil versions of themselves. And then they just wipe out the town.
They get into gunfights.
Right. So
all right.
You can have the crusty uncle, the feuding sisters, the worthless boyfriends, all of it. This will be just I look forward to the cease and desist letters from the CBC.
No, they don't care. They won't.
You can tell them it's the mandatory Canadian content. Look.
And if you want to bring in mandatory Canadian content, the local restaurant / tavern / hotel is run by the Schitt's Creek people. And so they're
yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So I like more Canadian content in there.
This could be the greatest Boot Hill game we ever run.
Okay.
This will be awesome. I'm already starting to get ideas, right? Like okay, this could be good.
If Alan's still listening, Alan Hammock's getting ideas if he's still on. He's going to do an all-Canadian version of Boot Hill next year.
Okay.
That's right. It's going to be set in Calgary, and they're all going to be angry. This could be trouble. Buffalo skin coats. I have a buffalo skin coat. I don't wear it often, but I have one. that I bought in Calgary. So
The Calgary.
trying.
You don't need it down. Like where do you live in Texas as well?
Who,
I'm
me?
in Texas. That's New York and Indiana, right?
Oh no, I'm in
Indiana. You're in
the
Indiana.
heart of
Why did-
Illinois.
Why do I call it? I get
It's
Illinois and Indiana
Flatlandia.
mixed up.
God
Okay.
decided that it had too many hills and just scraped that sucker flat with great
Ah, no, I've
leveled
been
it
in
all
Indiana.
out.
I
Do you
have
like? No,
friends
no, I'm in
Indiana.
Illinois. Do you
I
like
think
corn? Do you like
Oh no, I thought you
soybeans?
said Indiana.
I got 100 miles of corn and soybeans in every direction.
I think your temperatures, Ronan, are hotter than Texas the last week. I saw that Canada went through a heat wave, and you guys were actually hotter than we were here in DFW
Really?
for about
What
2
happened?
weeks.
Because when I was down there, it was hot. Like it was hot for me, and people were saying, "Oh yeah, this is average," and I'm like, "I'm being."
Oh, for
I felt
Texas,
like I was
that wasn't bad.
Yeah, it wasn't bad for Texas. Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
heard I heard parts of Canada had over 100-degree temperatures last week, and so we're still hovering around
Stop.
90.
They don't understand Fahrenheit. You might as well just tell them it's Freedom Eagles per mile. It doesn't work.
It's okay. The thing is, I'm not that young. Like when I was a kid, we still had Fahrenheit, and then we converted to Celsius. So yeah, you know, and besides,
come on. It's 70 degrees in Vancouver right now. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous.
It's not, I think it was other parts of Canada, like not us on the West Coast. On the West Coast, we usually don't get that hot, and we don't usually get that cold either. We just sort of have this mild effect. Yeah.
Well, and that's why Vancouver is so great. It's the most English-like place in all of Canada. You know, the weather is very consistent. It's in that same temperature range that you find a lot of in England, and that's why so many English immigrants to Canada settled in Vancouver and BC in particular. So
yeah, sure, yeah. It's a very mixed town now. Like we have people from all over the world now, but which is great for the food. Like it's Vancouver for food. It's just amazing. All the different.
The last time I got to Vancouver, I went to 3 different restaurants that they were all relatively recent, within a year, and I'm sure they all blew away within a year. But they were each one was just spectacular, absolutely spectacular. We a good friend of mine, a friend of my wife's her family is originally from Hong Kong and immigrated. He worked for her father worked for Nortel forever, but gosh, they knew the lay of the land for eating in Vancouver, and it was just amazing. We just had a great time. Yeah. I actually went to I was the best man at their wedding in Hong Kong, and that was, I have so many stories. So many stories.
Oh, nice. I do these informal Chinatown tours for friends that sometimes come up. I'll point out different things and describe them. And some of the things I'm saying are absolutely true and some aren't, but then, it's up to them to figure out what's
That's the kind of tour I love.
Oh yeah, I can speak enough Cantonese to sort of like to fake it, to like, oh yeah, I'm saying that. Who knows what the hell I'm saying?
So we're into the last half hour of the show, Ronan, and so I know we've got some things we all want to talk about. Do you mind sticking around? You're welcome to sort of hang out and hear some of this. I'd love to have you sort of throw in some things. I know Mike's got something he wants to debut, and there's also some other news. I have something I wanted to bring up though that's really interesting. Last week we started talking again about the terrible covers for the Dragonlance books. So Eric and Mike,
the new ones, yes, awful.
Oh, the new ones.
So interestingly, I started a conversation on one of the social media platforms this week, and I have learned some really interesting things. So number one, I took a look at the artist who actually did those and found out who that was. And I went to their webpage. And when you look at their art, they're really talented, which makes this so jarringly, like what the heck happened? And it turns out there's a much longer story here, but essentially it is that this is somebody who does big sweeping vistas really well. And when you look at the body of their work, they are nothing like the Dragonlance covers. But it was not the artist. It's our friends at Random House who decided to really sort of pay the artist a curve. And so we've been really pretty harsh on the show about the covers and the artwork.
Yeah, they were pretty bad.
And they are. And it's been so ill received by the community that the artist has, for the most part, now abandoned social media because the commentary has been so bad.
Oh,
wow.
God.
And so, like, I want to be the first person to say, all right, let's take a step back. He's actually filmed. He's one of these artists who's really been trying to show people how he does his work and so on and so forth. But there's an episode of his regular live stream that's up on YouTube where he talks about what Random House put him through on these covers. And so we have certainly heaped a great deal of scorn and derision on the covers, rightfully so. But my guess was absolutely right that when you look at the backgrounds, if you look at all three covers and you look at the backgrounds, you will see that they're really great, but it's the characters in the foreground where things take that horrible left turn to Albuquerque. And so,
do you think that? So what you're saying is you think that is one of those deals where he kept sending in art and they go, nope, we don't like that. Nope, we don't like that. Nope, we don't like that.
I'm going to get the link and we'll share this maybe.
Yeah, because I'd like to read that story.
Because it's really what number one is. I hate to hear that an artist has given up social media because of the backlash. And it's clear that what my theory is that it sits with the art director is true. The art director is the person that made this poor guy jump through all the hoops. It's heartbreaking when you hear this. And here is somebody who has done work for Games Workshop. He's done work for a lot of the major game studios. He's done work in the RPG field, and he does not deserve the torches and pitchforks. He literally was doing what he was told to. And then there's the matter of compensation. And that is equally frustrating and horrifying and so on and so forth. So my message this week is take a step back and take a breath, because this poor guy has been through hell. And we need to all just sort of recognize that there's a time and a place, and this is not the time and the place.
We figured there was a story behind it. We just weren't sure what the story was because the art was so abysmally awful that we were like, nobody turns this in on purpose. I mean, this doesn't make any sense. And now that you say this is kind of a corporate got involved thing, I can absolutely, it makes 100% sense now, because I'm sure what happened was he was tearing his hair out because everything he turned in, he probably got no direction. And he turned in like, no, that's not exactly what we want. We want really more of this. And when he turned that in, they say, yeah, that's not really what we want either. And this probably got to be
so the artist's name is Philip Ehrlich. Philip Ehrlich, Philip Ehrlich, Urlich. And he's got a great website with a ton of really fantastic pictures I mean, he's got just a ton of art under his belt, and all of it very solid. I'm trying to make sure I can get his website. His website is Ehrlich, Urlich.art. So if you get a chance, go take a look, right? Because it's very clear that he had the chops to do a great cover. But this is
this looks nice. This is oh my god, this is so much better than anything he did for oh my goodness. He even has some dragons here. There's some really good dragons.
And again, this is somebody who could do it, but was told to do something else. So there's this longer story here. I don't want to spend the next half hour talking about it, but I do want to say, the story is deeper. There is a background to this. This poor guy has suffered enough. Like, we need to all collectively move on and just say, if Larry Elmore does wraparound printable covers, we'll all just use those instead. So, Eric, did you want to talk about Diamond? Because it certainly sounds like Diamond has been hosing people over left and right.
Well, see, I'm not sure which part of the Diamond story is the worst part of the Diamond story or the best part.
Yeah.
It got worse. So it got worse as time went on.
Diamond was holding on consignment, which, I mean, technically means that they don't own it. They are holding it to sell. got caught up in the
Mm-hmm.
bankruptcy and is being auctioned off. So those that they listed DC and Marvel. That must be old stock because DC and Marvel, I believe, have moved on to other distributors before Diamond
Yes.
went bankrupt. But we saw this with Roll for Combat. He was talking about he had probably $100,000 worth of stock tied up at Diamond with his 5e releases, and even the thing is, if somebody buys it, it's going to be at one of those discount stores being sold at pennies on the dollar. So he's in competition with his own product, which is a lost loss. And
the worst part, Eric, I guess the worst part for me is when I was reading this, I don't understand. So I mean, maybe somebody can understand bankruptcy better than I can. How are they allowed to sell everybody else's product and not return it and say, we're not going to return your product, we're going to sell it, and we're going to use that money to fulfill the bankruptcy.
The banks and other first.
Yeah, how do they? I mean, is that just part of bankruptcy court? I don't know well enough
Rob
to know
Conley, being Rob Conley, looked into it today. It was like, well, if they filled out form 123 ABC and submitted it with every consignment, this wouldn't have happened. But I obviously nobody was thinking in that way, and I don't think anybody thinks that, wow, a distributor like Diamond is going to go bankrupt. I think there was a bit of a blindsiding on that one. But also a number of people at Diamond that have been there for decades in some cases have been leaving. There's been complaints that the sales reps that people have been dealing with have been changing on a weekly basis. So this is post bankruptcy, Diamond is not paying its bills. So it is a shit show, and it's one of those things that I don't know how much of this is gonna hit our industry. If you are a comic book publisher, God bless you.
Yeah, I noticed that Preston, the guy that comes to our con, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of his company. He said he has product with him that's gone. Yeah. He's never going to get it back.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Preston Poulter. I don't know his comic, but yeah, he said, oh, yeah, I got product with him. I'm never going to get it back. It's just a write-off at this point. So, anybody has comics is pretty much with Diamond screwed. And the gaming industry, they were saying that you may have, Paizo, Green Ronin, probably. I
think Steve Jackson.
I don't know if WotC has anything. Yeah, Steve Jackson. Goodman Games. Yeah. Goodman Games is one of the listed people. They've all got product with Diamond. So that's turning out to be a major, horrific fiasco for anybody.
I guess theoretically, if you are a consumer / customer, there may be bargains hitting later on this summer, but it's not for a good reason.
Yeah, don't you feel dirty buying that stuff?
You better be buying dirty companies. I hate them. Oh, I'll buy their stuff for 10 cents on the dollar. Yeah.
But all right, we're going to segue from Diamond into something actually where really sad news this week that I expected at some point, which was that Jim Shooter of Marvel Comics died.
Oh yes, I saw that.
And
God.
And what a legend, if you're going to talk about Stan Lee, in the same breath, you have to talk about Jim Shooter. There were people at some point that used to talk bad about Shooter, but there's nobody that led the comic industry the way that Shooter did for as long as he did. And this is somebody who got it. This is somebody who we've talked about this on the show before when Chris Claremont comes up with Jean Grey dying and Phoenix dying, and they start to talk about, well, how can we bring her back in 6 months, or how can we bring her back in a year? And Shooter's like, she's dead. She's not coming back. She's dead. We're killing the character.
But Jim, famously, Claremont and Byrne just wanted to take her powers
and he's
away.
Like,
remember that? There's actually panels.
She made an entire dinner of the asparagus people. She's dying, and she isn't coming back.
But Shooter said, no, and it's become an iconic run now because her getting her powers taken away would have been stupid. Because, like you said, Jim, 6 months later, she'd have had her powers back. This was Shooter saying, "No, this run
That's right. There has to be
mean
consequences
something, and it's
for
going to mean
actions,
something."
and she wiped out an entire race of
But
asparagus people.
he oversaw Simonson's run of Thor. He oversaw Frank Miller's role of Daredevil.
All the people
Daredevil run. He oversaw Burns' Fantastic Four.
In great,
just
glowing terms are a direct result of the Shooter time at.
Yep, this classic run after classic run after classic run he oversaw, and I there's a few. So he had a blog for a while, and I read it religiously, and it was the most. He was very truthful about the stories he told, and so for those who don't know, he was a child genius. He was writing for DC Comics at age 16, because he sent in some plots, and I can't remember whoever the editor was liked him, and then said, "We need to meet, and I want you to work for us." And he came up there with his mom, and the guy said, "Holy crap! Well, you can work for us, but your mom has to get permission, and we're not going to tell anybody how old you are." And he wrote a lot of Legion of Superheroes. That was his first thing he wrote for DC Comics. He was a teenager writing those.
And so, like he had a great innate sense of marketing. He's the guy responsible for Secret Wars and the Spider-Man costume, the first ever change in the Spider-Man costume. But I read a great story, and I'm sorry to say I can't remember who the artist was. But I read a story from an artist who said, I wanted to break into comics and I wanted to meet Jim Shooter. And I found out he was going to be at a convention, and I went. And he says, here I am, snotty-nosed kid, 20s, got a portfolio of art. And I end up talking to Jim Shooter. And Jim Shooter says, these are great. Like, yes. How about we go have dinner? And he says, okay. And he says, and Jim Shooter says, pick a restaurant. And he says, how about McDonald's? And he says, okay. And they go to McDonald's, and they sit in the McDonald's for 2 hours. And Shooter goes through his portfolio, talks about his art style, talks about things he could do to make it better, blah, 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 blah. And at the very end, Shooter says, I want to ask you, I would have taken you to any restaurant in the city. Why did you say McDonald's? And he says, because I'm not a published artist, and I wouldn't want Marvel to spend money on somebody like me where I don't, like I'm not a John Byrne, I'm not a, and I didn't want to be a burden on Marvel Comics. And Jim Shooter said, you're absolutely going to work for Marvel. You're one of us. And I'm just like, oh, I want to cry, right? But Shooter got it. Like Shooter took a look at Arthur Adams' work and was like, give this guy a book. Give him a book. Let him start working for it.
So he had I have two really good Jim Shooter stories. So one is he came out with something in the early 80s called the Marvel Tryout book.
Yes.
Do you remember this, Jim? It was an oversized book, and it was basically you got to do either art, inking, editing, whatever. So it was just a tryout book. It said, here's the plot. You either write it, you can draw it, you can ink it, you can do whatever. And it had a section for each of these. And you would do this and send it in, and they went through it. And they found the artist Mark Bagley. If you know who Mark Bagley is, he did Spider-Man for years and years. He was discovered through this tryout book. He was basically the winner of the contest, so to speak. So, I mean, Jim Shooter was always out thinking outside the box, stuff like that. He also, I remember an interview with him early in Comics Journal in the early 80s. They said, well, what do you think your greatest achievement is? Now, like I said, this is a guy that oversaw, he said, Frank Miller wants to do Daredevil. I think this kid's got something. Let's do it. John Byrne wants to be writer, artist of Fantastic Four. Let's do it. I mean, he would do this, but he said his greatest achievement was when he got to be editor-in-chief, he hated it. If you remember in the 70s, he hated when they had fill-in issues.
Yes.
A fill-in issue was when they reprinted a story because the dreaded deadline doom hit, and either the artist or the writer had not gotten it done. So you'd buy your issue of Spider-Man, get all excited, get home, flip the first page, and it was a reprint of an early Spider-Man issue. And you were pissed. And this happened in Fantastic Four. I mean, every superhero comic had this. And so he said, I will not have a fan spend his 25 cents, 50 cents on a reprint. So he immediately got artists and writers to work and created a slush fund, a slush pile of stories that could be fit into any he did Daredevil ones, Fantastic Four, Spider, whatever. And so whenever the dreaded deadline doom hit, he went to the slush pile, pulled out a story. He said his entire tenure at Marvel, there was never a reprint story. Yeah. He said that's what he was proudest of. And I thought that was amazing because that's something he did that for the fans because look, it saved him money, right? Oh, we don't have to come up with an issue this week. We have to pay our writer artists. Let's just reprint Fantastic 450 and throw that in there, and we'll just tell the people, sorry, we were late this month. He did not believe in doing that. He said, no, the fan is entitled to have a new story every issue. And now we think about that. That's the most ludicrous thing you can think of. What, a reprint story instead of that doesn't make any sense. It was a regular practice in the 70s.
I can't tell you how many times you mentioned the Fantastic Four. I got burned by so many reprint issues of the Fantastic Four as a kid that I gave up buying the comic book because I just it was like a bad lottery where you didn't just get a losing ticket. You had paid twice what it was worth.
And they even do the thing where sometimes they go, the Thing is hurt, but he's having a dream about this old battle. You're like, oh no. And sure enough, you turn the page and it's a Strange Tales from 1969. Like, oh my God. What? So he was a very polarized figure. Now he also was real famous for something called Valiant Comics. He started his own comic company, Valiant, extremely successful. He made some bad decisions with that. One is trusting people he shouldn't have trusted, and eventually the company was arrested from after about 2 years. But in its time, it was extremely successful. And to this day, certain Valiant comic characters, Exo Man of War, and some of the other ones, they still have series going on. Not with Valiant. Valiant's long out of business. But that was when that came out, that was like, whoa, this is actually some really good storytelling. And so he was just an amazing guy. He didn't work a lot after Marvel. He went back to DC. He did some Legion superhero stuff. He had really bad health the last 4 or 5 years of his life. He's been at a lot of conventions last year. So I talked to a friend of mine, Brian Tidwell, and I said, why isn't he doing more conventions? He said he's very sick. He's going to die very soon. He did, and he was right because he passed away. But he was trying to do a lot of stuff towards the end to pay bills, basically. And so he did a lot of conventions. I wish I could. I'm not a big guy to attend comic conventions, but I really wish I could have gone to a convention, seen him, and just thanked him for what he did in Marvel in the 1980s, because it was an amazing period.
My Facebook feed was actually full of Jim Shooter stories, and the one that struck with me was the story from Richard and Wendy Penny, the ElfQuest creative team, and they were in New York and they were visiting the Marvel offices because they had friends there, and they're talking, and out comes Jim Shooter, and he looks at Wendy and he goes, "You're an artist, right?" She's like, "Yeah." "Good. Ink this page for me." And he goes, "We're running late." And she inks the page. He cashes her out, gives her they were like, "Wow." It took her 2 hours. He's like, "Thank you." And then they took it back, and that page was done, and they were closer to being able to get the book out on time.
That's the classic Jim Shooter story right there.
Wow.
Yeah,
hey kid, you grab an ink.
Hey, you're an artist, right?
If you can find his old blog, there's an old blog he did, and I'm sorry, I'm just throwing this out there. I don't know if you can find the blog. He did it for about 2 years. Read it. Every entry is just wow. It's a story about the old days. He'll tell about going to eat with this guy or having a meeting with this guy. It's just the most amazing look into the comic industry and how really the people who were up here were trying to screw every single person below them, and how Jim would, say, "Look, we can't do that to the artist. We can't do that to the writer. Like we always did it. That's the way it's always been done." No, that's the way it has been done. Right. We don't have to do it like that. And he really changed the way. He was by the way, he was the first editor-in-chief who gave profit sharing to writers and artists. Because if you remember correctly, you'd write a comic, especially the X-Men guys, and they would sell 1 million copies, and they would get this much more than the guy who was writing Daredevil, nothing. And he made it. He put in there. They actually had profit sharing. So if you made a title popular, you actually benefited by extra sales. Now, unfortunately, that resulted in Wolverine being in every issue of every comic for 5 years, as everybody tried to boost the sales of their comic. But in the long run, it actually made comics better because people wanted you to read their comic. They weren't just, I'm going to write this comic. I don't care about Daredevil. And they're like, no, I want to make Daredevil good because I want it to sell a lot.
The deep roots of my ninja fatigue lie squarely with how many ninjas were in orbit around Wolverine at any given time. By the late 80s, he was just, it was like the bad trilogy of Hanzo the Razor films, right? You're just waiting for more ninjas or shenanigans.
Or, Wolverine was going to somehow, it doesn't matter where the story took place, Jim, Wolverine was going to be there and he was going to pop those claws so that the kid seeing the book on the newsstand would grab that off like, Wolverine's in this issue of Power Pack.
Oh,
awesome.
Don't even say that. So don't even say, like somebody mentioned Star Slammers in the chat, and that is an epic Walter Simonson graphic novel. And give Shooter credit, right? He came up with the entire graphic novel concept, which is let's do mature stories.
Oh yeah, I forgot that was huge too. I forgot all about that.
Don't even get me started about whatever the boxing one was they convinced me to buy.
Super Boxers by John Byrne. Super Boxers. You didn't enjoy that one,
but it also gave you closure like Kill Raven. Holy shit!
How about Craig Russell's Elric graphic novel? That was to this day, oh my god, that's amazing. It's what was the one? I can't remember. It's one where he goes back to Melnibone and destroys it. It's just most of. If you've not,
I have a friend whose weekends in high school may have had chemical enhancement, and the greatest thing he ever told me was that he had the Elric graphic novel, and I believe the easiest phrase to say, he was as high as a kite. But he reached over and he grabbed a pair of 3D glasses that he had laying around from where they had aired the old Vincent Price movie or whatever, and local stations worked out a deal with advertisers to sell the glasses. But he had the 3D glasses, and he said he read the whole thing front to back with the 3D glasses on. And he was just like, and the colors were hitting my face.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because, that's actually, I can't remember if Lynn Varley did the colors. That's actually an amazingly colorized graphic novel. I don't know what the colorist did a great job in it, but Elric, it's a city on the edge of forever. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a great graphic novel. But all the graphic novels that all started under Shooter, also just an amazing innovator. And honestly, that is also when he became editor in chief. That's when Marvel started outselling DC, because for years Marvel could not get past Batman and Superman. They just outsold everything Marvel had, and they tried, and then not till then they had New X-Men, they had Daredevil. I mean, they had all these, suddenly these things took off. And then after that, they've outsold DC ever since then. This is like 1980. So that they finally started outselling DC. And he was the reason behind that, because he said, look, we're going to do good stories, good art. We're going to make this, because DC was still in their mode where, the kids will read anything. Have Superman fight a 3-armed alien, whatever. And then Luthor pops in and they don't care. They're kids. And he was more like, no, our audience is aging. They want more sophisticated comics. And look, if you read New X-Men back in the day, it was a sophisticated comic. It was really good. It was. I still have the Marvel Masterworks, and I'll flip through those.
I'm friends with Joe Duffy, the old Marvel employee, on Facebook.
Oh yeah,
she wrote something just short and sweet, and this is a good note to sort of end. Jim Shooter was an immensely talented writer, an insightful editor, a passionate advocate, and a devoted fan. And we owe him so much. And so I think that's a great footnote. I think he changed comics for the better. I have just a pile of the Marvel omnibuses behind me, and so many of those are from the sweet spot of where Shooter had really transformed Marvel. The Walter Simonson run, on Thor, oh my God, the John Carter Warlord of Mars books. it was just another license. But Shooter, Shooter was just a genius for that. I don't want to get into more of it, but what else?
Yeah.
We had some. Oh, Mike, you had a new feature tonight.
I have a new feature. This week is the first new feature. And so to make it short and sweet, my office, as you know, I had a redo. I was in my upstairs for years, and down here in my office, part of that redo was I dug my stereo, my 30-year-old stereo out of storage, hooked it up, worked perfectly. I have a 5 CD changer there. Now, for those who don't know, I used to work in a music store for quite a while, and I am a music buff. I have close to 3,000 CDs, hundreds and hundreds of albums, cassettes, any kind of music. I love music, and my tastes are very eclectic. So every week we're going to do a short segment where I tell you what is my 5 CDs. I now have my 5 CD changer. You may recognize some of these. Some of these are going to have no idea what I'm talking about. If you have any questions, let me know. I can tell you about the bands or whatever. But here's our first inaugural, the 5 CDs that Mike is playing. And I'm going to go probably to least known to best known. I'll go to like ones you've never heard of to ones you've heard. Okay, here we go. True Believers. True Believers is an 80s Texas band. Really good. Alejandro Escovedo was in this band. Really great Mexican artist. Great Texas rock and roll.
Number 2.
Vulgar Boatmen. I don't remember much. Walter Salas Humara was in that. He was also a Mexican American, although it's not Mexican American music. It's just rock. Vulgar Boatmen, Wide Awake, great album.
Good
name, Vulgar.
Now I'm going to start getting stuff you might have heard of. Do you remember a band called the Crash Test Dummies?
Yeah.
They
I've
had
been
a couple
trying
of
to
songs.
forget
One
them
was
for years.
Superman.
Yeah.
Superman song. They're Canadian.
they're Canadian.
They're a Canadian band.
They sing from
It's not a bad album, okay? Not a bad album.
Number
And again, the
4.
injustice. The injustice is that they had more success on the U.S. charts than the Tragically Hip, which is unforgivable.
Right.
This gentleman here, Pete Townsend. This is a best of album. This is called the Best of Pete Townsend. He had some really good solo albums in the 80s. Rough Boys, Let My Love Open the Door, Slip Skirts, English Boy. I mean, he had some really good stuff, Pure and Easy. This is a really, really good album with all his greatest hits on it. I would highly recommend that. And Elvis Costello's first album, My Aim Is True. Classic.
Oh, yeah.
I had not listened to this in probably 10 years, and I have a box set that has the first 3 albums all redone by Ryko Disc. I mean, it's just every song on here is a banger.
Young
It's an
Hungry
absolute
Elvis
banger.
is the best.
Miracle
Elvis.
Man.
Young Hungry Elvis is the best.
Alice, Sneaky Feelings, Less Than Zero, Mystery Dance. I mean, Watch the Detectives, Waiting for the End of the World. I mean, just banger, 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 banger. This guy in the 70s, is there anybody that had more success with their first 3 albums? This guy, where every song was good. There was not one lame in the bunch. So I'm kind of going to do a deep dive into Elvis Costello, I think, the next few weeks. But those are the 5 CDs on my CD changer. Maybe next week we might have some new ones. We may have some holdovers, because sometimes they'll stay on that CD player for a week or two. You never know.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
We're already hitting the witching hour. Holy crap.
That's all right.
No, I went
A hell of a lot worse.
Ronin.
Oh, no, we're not doing that at all.
Okay, so all right, so why don't we go through the rest of the band? Ronin, what's one of your go-to CDs? What's one of the all-time favorites?
Oh my God. Okay. I'm just trying to think of it, because I stream these days, so you can't have the whole CD ideas. You know what?
You think about it, and I'll tell you the retro one that's haunted me for a week.
You know what? The one I'm thinking of right now, for whatever reason, this is jumping, screaming into my head, is Led Zeppelin 4.
Okay, you can't go wrong.
Oh, I just
one of us.
Although I like 1. I like Led Zeppelin 1 just because I think it was their first one. It just was so vital, This was just so amazing. But 4, yeah. stuff comes
So
out.
I have spent the last week suffering because I lived in Minnesota for 12 years, and Jesus Christ, all the locals will tell you about Prince and their encounters with Prince and blah
Yeah,
blah 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 blah.
that's
But
great.
but
That's
I
right.
had a wild hair about a week and a half ago, and I decided to listen to Purple Rain, the soundtrack album. And holy shit, it just every note lands, and it's really dated, right? It's so dated of that Minneapolis scene from 83, 84. But holy crap, it still has legs. It's still sharp. It still punches. There's a couple of clunkers that you're just like, okay, yeah, all right, that's filler. But God, like, yeah.
So I have the opinion, Jim, that they should have absolutely retired the halftime show after he did Purple Rain in the Rain. That was Super Bowl 50, 40, whatever. That was after that, they should have said, you know what? We're not going to get better than this. No more bands for the halftime show. We're just going to have a marching band go out there and play, because Prince absolutely owned the stage that night. It was just, I mean, you can watch that. I've watched it dozens of times over and over again. He just didn't make, and it was raining. It's raining.
It isn't just raining. It's like a gale.
It's raining.
Yeah.
Pouring on him. There is no way. I'm sorry. You get a pop star nowadays. Ooh, and I'm not going out there in the rain. And he was like, let's do it. Because they even said, they gave him the option. Do you want to do this? And he's like, yes, I'm going to do it. Of course I'm playing in the rain.
And I have made the mistake of trying to listen to some of the Purple Rain soundtrack adjacent music, like Morris Day and the Times, Ice Cream Castles.
Right.
God help me, I even tried to listen to Vanity Six and really Purple Rain. I just remember that first, When Doves Cry, that's the first video release, and that was the first hint of what was coming. And then that album lands, and it's Let's Go Crazy, I Would Die for You, Purple Rain, Darling Nikki, which was the song you had to dive for the stereo knobs so that you wouldn't get in trouble.
Your parents,
would hear that was an interesting one. Yeah, Darling Nikki.
Yeah, Computer Blue, where you're like, there are lesbians on the album. This is quite, like Wendy and Lisa didn't hold anything back. Like it's just that album is a really, really interesting snapshot, and really, really still it bangs.
It's good stuff. It may make it on our 5 CD.
All right,
list
Eric,
at some
what's
point.
yours?
I just did it.
My top one. It's going to be either Tears for Fears.
Songs for the Big Chair.
It was my first CD. I just and Dire Straits,
Brothers in Arms.
Oh, and a more obscure one, The Ocean Blue.
Yeah, I bought Brothers in Arms on.
Oh, I love that's a great album. That is a great album. The first album is
amazing.
So I have Brothers in Arms on CD, and one of the most interesting things about that is it was one of the very first CD releases. So what you want to do is you want to look for one, because the original first pressing of the CD is this thick, unbelievably thick, high quality CD back when they were charging you $70, $50, $60 for one. And if you look around long enough, you'll find one. But Eric, I actually bought the album today. I actually found a really, really nice copy at my local old guy radio or LP store. And it was gorgeous. And I bought it just because Brothers in Arms is so good. It's so great.
Spot on. I mean, at the time I was working in a department store, but I was working in the electronics department. And it's like, I bought my first CD boombox, and I need to get some good albums for it. And I was like, all right, let's get them. Went to the Wiz. Nobody beats the Wiz.
I'm thinking of doing a bucket of guitar solos I must learn before I die, or something. Just for fun, because I was more of a keyboard player than a guitar player, but it was one of those things.
I love the intersection of music and the times of our lives, right? if you ever want a Wayback Machine trip, ask Alexa to play pop music from blank year. And if I ask Alexa to play pop music from 1982, holy shit! I have my Holmes box set. I have I got my dice. I'm like Asia's Heat of the Moment is blaring, and I am
oh my God,
right for the world. It's just perfect.
I haven't heard that in years. Heat of the oh my God, that does bring back memories. Heat of the Moment. That's what I attempted to ask a girl out for. Like I'd never been on a date, and I failed. And I could hear heat of the moment. I could hear that sort of.
That's right.
That was on somewhere when that happened. Yeah, it was great.
But we are all there in that moment with you, Ronin. Trust me. Trust me.
Oh my God. Thank you,
dude.
I would have needed
I spent a year pining for a girl my senior year of high school to ask her to prom. And I finally screwed up the courage to ask her, and that bastard Jeff Palmater asked her out literally like an hour before or 10 minutes before, whatever. And she's sitting behind me like, oh, Jeff asked me out. I'm like, son of a bitch. Now, the best part is for her, they got married, they have a bunch of kids, they lived happily ever after. And I'm just like, missed me by that much. Thank you. My life of adventure continued. Whatever. So
well, thanks Ronin for appearing with us. We had a great time, and
thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's fun just to get on here.
I look forward to meeting this fictitious awesome. Canadian wife of yours at some point. I think this will be good fun.
I've seen pictures.
Gary actually offered to bring her out to next North Texas.
Good. She can join the
okay.
I'm just saying, Gary.
That's the peanut gallery. That's excellent.
Gary's in. Yeah, Gary. If Gary's in, we're in.
She'll be assimilated with the rest of the women. Yeah, they have their own secret organization.
Like I said, she's one of us. I mean, yes.
Yeah, no, dude. Most of the wives are kind of like one of us.
Are there players?
Great
gamers. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She wasn't me, but she's a gamer. But you know what?
Okay.
The wives have
don't paint her as the spouse of a gamer. She's a gamer. Like it's and we have to be married.
Here. Let me ask you: Does she collect or does she game?
She games. Like collection is mostly.
Right. No,
I'm the one that collects.
All right. Yeah. So see right there.
Yeah.
Rachel's laughing behind me. Right there is the disconnect. Okay, trust me.
Yeah,
the women will bond over bitching about our collecting. I'm sure it's the most of what they're talking about.
Wow.
No, actually,
no, Rachel. Well, really?
I gotta tell you a story though.
Like bonding over like perfumes. I know that much.
In the early days of my collecting, right? I used to buy. When eBay was new and all the stuff was available all of a sudden and it was cheap.
Yep.
I would buy these enormous sort of lots, right? Just so I could find a bit of what I needed. And all my duplicates, Marianne sold all of them. She sold so many that she was like a top eBay seller for a while. Then we got tired.
There goes your memory.
We got tired of doing that, so we stopped. I stopped collecting that way, and by then I had really built up a big enough collection that made more sense just to buy the individual things instead of buying lots. So,
trust me, she'll have a very good time at North Texas.
Okay, I'm sure she will. I want her to go, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ronin, thanks for coming on tonight. This has been great.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We look forward to seeing you at shows where all the three of us are usually at most of the major shows, and
it'll be a game.
You want to stay at the Sheraton. Pro tip.
Really? Instead of the
Stars is being redone. Redone. Alex assures me they gutted the whole thing and it's a new hotel.
Sure.
So fingers crossed. It was terrible. It's terrible. Right. It was terrible. But the Sheraton.
Well, it's time to call it a night, Gracie. I got a dog to go take outside.
There you go.
Okay. night.
Ronin, thank you. Everybody in the live stream, thank you. Thank you to Zach for supporting our lives. Other than that, we're working on the Wednesday night live streams, folks. We got a good lineup, a lot of names in the hat, so it should be a good summer. Other than that, be safe, be well, God bless. Roll those dice, roll them well. I got a live stream tomorrow night at 8, Friday at 8, Saturday at 8. What can I tell you? I know.
Jeez. That's a lot of
Hey.
streams.
If it only paid.